Saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. I'd like all of you to use the power of your hands right now. I'm going to teach you a little mudra, which is almost like a yoga pose for the hands. And what you're going to do is just put all of your fingers together and then make a street with your two thumbs, like this, and bring the street to the tip of your index fingers. Beautiful. And there should be, if you hold this up, there should be a tiny little opening that you should see right where your third eye view is. And this little opening is different for everyone. Everyone has a different shape. And this is the mudra of the inner being and activating the highest form of the inner self. And when you hold this mudra and you stare into this tiny opening without blinking for as long as you can, you activate this energetically in your body as well. So I'd like you to do this. And the sound that we're going to make as we do this is simply a whisper of H-O-O-O, sounding like this. Hoo. 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 Just 3 more times like that, without blinking. Hoo. 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 And bring this mudra down to your chin. Bless yourself, bless everyone around you. We as empathic people take on a lot of energy. Part of our purpose is to help people transmute this. And mudras can help us transmute our own energy. Just go ahead and take one final deep breath and release on that snake. Thank you guys for holding space. I will pass on the mic to Emil, my brother Emil.
Serena, you're amazing.
Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful.
Yes, thank you, Serena. Love that mantra, really tuning into the vibration feeling in the body. So I ask everyone to just breathe deeply a few times, settle more into where you are, allowing what Serena activated also to keep flowing, knowing that that has been woken up and is feeding everything we're doing. Just going to play us through in some beautiful sounds from around the world. Let this representation of our connection to the earth and each other open up more creative energies, more connective energies from within and without. maintain your state for a little longer. Breathe deeply. On your next inhale, you can let out a sigh or a hum. Move your body around a little if you want. So grateful to be here with all of you. Get back to the up game. So much gratitude.
Wow. You know, I don't know what or how you just did that. I've never heard anything like that in my life. That is incredible. Thank you. What an abundance of talents we have. This is you know, truly the micro to the macro of the world. The most wasted resource we have is people. And our prayer for the game is that we can unleash the talents of as many people as possible through this game process. So with that said, we wanted a moment for deep connection. I'm a little kind of on the time. Sarah, what do you feel? Should we break into groups? We're gonna break into just small groups and share one experience that was the first thing that comes to mind as the most transformative, powerful experience you've ever had with sound, as a way to just go around the circle and connect in smaller groups and then come back to the circle. Do you feel, Sarah, do you think we should jump into that? Maybe just 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's going to be, how many groups can we make? Is there a limit?
Yeah,
on your end?
we can, I can bring us into just really small groups, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think groups of 3 or 4 would work so that so everybody has a chance to go, but it doesn't go on too long, just to make sure that we have enough time to also dive into our 8 areas today.
Yeah. There's something about the live stream. Let's maybe if we, rather than just on the timing, because something about the live streaming isn't letting me do the breaking into groups. We've got to stop it all. So let's just we will break into groups, but maybe what we could do is if anyone feels they can share a moment with all of us, and then we'll go into the synthesis of the 8 uploads that we did yesterday. How does that sound?
And Lucian, let's make sure that people get to speak up who maybe didn't get to share yesterday, since we weren't able to go around the whole group.
Sure, that would be perhaps we could do that. Anybody that hasn't, Emily, I know you're here. Would love to hear from you. Just introduction to yourself, where you are, and how long you've been a sound practitioner. And feel free to share a story as well. And anyone else that didn't go round, I'm just looking. Good to see you, Emily.
Okay. Yeah, so hey guys, my name's Emily Bush. So I've been playing with music, I would say, since I was little. I started with some violin and taught myself some guitar, and currently I'm teaching myself with some piano. And then about 6 months ago, maybe I bought a set of crystal bowls and started playing with those too. And I'm currently working on a company with a business partner. And we're using a mixture of vibration, sound, and light to help drop people into deep theta brainwave states. The experience is about 20 minutes, and we work with a handful of sound practitioners and different music. And it came about because we were thinking, well, I mean, for me, it kind of came about, at least I can share that story, is I just think mental health is such a really important piece of the puzzle of being here on Earth. And I think that we should make our time that we're spending here like a very fruitful one. And I think a lot of society is living in a very heightened state. And this device so far, at least for me, has really been able to take me out of those deep heightened states and really draw me into a more of a calm and serene and kind of just happier state. So that's kind of my relationship, at least a little bit, with sound, and I'm really happy to be here. So thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much, Emily. Appreciate you. Did anyone else not speak yesterday?
Yeah, Dawn Dawson didn't go,
Dawn.
so yeah,
Yeah.
maybe Dawn can speak up.
Hi, everyone. I have a quick story, which I thought was pretty profound many years ago. And my husband and I dance, and we were in Boston, and we went to a dance school to just check it out. And it was an old school, like a educational, like a grade school. And so they had many rooms. And as I approached, I heard this drumming. And the drumming literally opened up my center, my heart. Everything was exploding with this amazing, amazing energy. And I'd never experienced that before. And I certainly had heard drumming. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find out where it was coming from because we had another meeting. So I called the school, tried to get information, didn't get anywhere. So for years, I would go online and listen to African drumming to see if I could find that again, because it was just so transformational in terms of my experience. And then one day I realized that I'm Native, I know that I'm a Native American Indian. So I started listening to drumming from Native American Indian tribes on iTunes. So I was going through, I think when I searched it, maybe 50 samples came up, and they're like 30 seconds long. And I wasn't paying attention to the titles. I was just hitting the space bar as I was doing something else. And then after many of them that I heard, all of a sudden I started having that feeling again. And I looked over, and it was the only one that was from my tribe, which was the Blackfoot tribe. So what I got from that is that my DNA recognized the sound that was specifically from my Native American tribe. So that was really profound for me.
Right, Bart.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Dawn. I think Francois wanted to speak? Francois, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me? You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sure, good. I don't know if we answered the question about what struck me in music, or the question of yesterday. Where do you, I mean, what is most important for me in music now, in sound health?
You could do both, Francois.
Okay.
You get double because you missed out.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, I'm going to try to be quick. Well, I'm a musician. I was composing music, and I went on tour, and I did a lot of drugs, and I got lost a few years ago, and I healed myself with sound meditation, with vocal meditation, and tuning forks on the acupuncture points, and what, you know, so there was so many experiences where sound really brought the spirit back to me. But to go back to what a lot of people said yesterday is that now I work in a cancer institute in Paris, and what is the most important for me, what always strikes me, is the need people have to be listened, and how much they want to believe and want to awaken the divine inside themselves. And but they don't always believe in themselves or in the practice, because they just don't know about the power of sound. And this is what is really important for me, is about teaching the you know, as soon as somebody see cymatics, they're like, wow, this is the effect of sound. Okay, so they start to open to something, and because they've never been taught about it before, about the fact that vibration links everything. So when we talk and educate about the power of sound, about the medical science behind it, then the left and right brain are equally stimulated, and they start to see the big picture. And that's what I really love, is to open something that has been opened at some point in my life. And suddenly they are really willing to go inward and to go inside to look for the vibration of their souls, and then the spirit inside awakes and the healing happened. And so yeah, then the door opened, where they can finally talk about the vibration technology that has been around for centuries, for decades, and that is not known enough. And that's what seemed important for me right now, is to transmit these informations, and you know, like prime resonance frequencies to kill cancer cells with sound, and the understanding that water can be informed, and then the body of water can be informed. The understanding of brainwaves, the understanding of that molecules are like melodies, and that if we listen actively to the frequency of a disease, of a virus inside myself, then I can also listen to the remedy. And by the way, the some MIT scientists have turned the structure of the coronavirus into music. I don't know if you know that. And the musical map of the protein structure of the protein may help to identify areas that can be targeted by drugs or antibodies. So that's very interesting to see that all the things that were, you know, when I talk about this, people are like, and you see that now the MIT or a lot of medical or political institutions start to really, okay, to open to a field of consciousness that is all about frequency and vibration. And so yeah, so and then when they understand that sound doesn't only heal themselves, people
since the 60s we've had this degradation of faith in
sorry,
institutions, right? So like, and that's what leads us to this conclusion that, you know,
I think
there is no such
Can
no,
someone go on mute while Francois is speaking?
social history
Yes.
through science.
It was an answer.
Look back at the 60s,
I'm going to be quick.
the 40s, and before, and say, well, you know,
All right.
well,
Is there
let's talk
anybody
about
else who
that.
didn't
Sorry.
speak up yesterday to introduce themselves or to share, who wants to share here? I think we have time maybe for one more share before we introduce the groups. Danielle? See Danielle?
Hi, thank you so much. I'd just like to share this story because I feel like it's not necessarily a pleasant entry into sound healing, although it was a blessing for me. All my life I had been sick on and off again, and losing my hair, losing the enamel on my teeth, and at 28 was kind of the catalyst for me to look at alternative therapies and not be so skeptical coming from my military brat upbringing. And in a nutshell, found out that all my health issues were a gluten allergy. Took gluten out of my diet, felt what healthy felt like for the first time in my life at 28. And that was actually the catalyst for me to start becoming open to why was I not open to these alternative therapies or other ways of thinking in the first place, and started doing my first yoga class, my first massage, my first all of these things, including a sound bath. And at the time I lived in San Francisco, went to my first sound bath at the Globe Institute. I walked in, and for me, at that time, I had a lot of skepticism and a lot of judgment, and I was not open to this, necessarily open to the space that I was walking into or the opportunity at that time. And even laying down on the floor next to other people, I was like, I gotta touch naked elbows next to people, laying down next to these strangers. And I finally got to a point where I was able to calm my mind and lay down into the experience. And actually at a certain point disrupted the whole experience with crying uncontrollably, and all of these howls and moans just came out of nowhere. And I don't know if anyone else in the group has had a history with just being sick for the majority of your life, but for me it was a coping mechanism and a way of adapting to life, that because I couldn't control what was happening in my body, I had to control everything else outside of my body. I could control my emotions, I could control what I say, or at least my emotions outwardly. And so to be in this experience where I lost control over my body, I lost control over my emotions, and then to come out of this experience with the people that I walked into the room judging, and this thing that I was really skeptical of, all of those people supporting me in my crying, and my anger. There's just so much anger and rage that came through in that first experience. I actually, the sound practitioner of that session couldn't actually explain to me what was happening to me, but was like, oh, well, this is a school and you should come back tomorrow. David will be here and he'll explain what happened to you. And so I went back the next day, and actually ended up, his program had already started a week into it, but I talked him into letting me sign up anyway. But I didn't sign up for the program because I wanted to be a sound healer. I signed up because I was angry. I was angry that I lost control, and I wanted to know and learn why I had lost control over my body and emotions. So that was my entry into it, and then slowly evolved out of my my career in commercial photography and marketing into sound healing. Not even about halfway through the program, and haven't turned back since.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I love these stories. It's just everybody's journey to this point feels like what Steve Jobs said, the dots connect in the rearview mirror. And does everyone else feel that their life has been a kind of dojo, like a training school for this moment? Does that resonate?
Absolutely.
so that
Yep,
somehow
in every single
some
way.
intelligent design, nature, trust in nature, you know. So, well, thank you for that awesome yin session. Thank you so much, Serena and Emil, for your offerings. It's just, yeah, textbook for what we're invoking for this beginning yin session. And part of the thinking here is that if we can synchronize our heartbeats, if we can synchronize our breaths, we can synchronize our minds. And the intention of our effort here is collective intelligence, is to allow collective intelligence and approach that with faith, trust, and love. To invite into a space where we're recognizing that, look, sound is unquestionably going to be one of the, if you like, building blocks of a new civilization. And if we can, in a week's process, synthesize some of the most important things that people should know about sound, that's mission accomplished of the game. And this is just week one, right? It's going to be an ongoing process, and our intention is that we can spread all forms of resources around the topics that we choose, not just capital, but also other people, press, etc. So the intention of the game is it's an engine that keeps rolling. So with that, part of our job here is, and we're you know, we're rookies, right? This is our inaugural week, so bear with us, and we really welcome as much feedback as possible, because we're going to be refining this every week, because we think there's no better way to optimize than do in the dojo. And so what we wanted to do is synthesize what we heard yesterday in a way that could begin to take us into directions for these uploads, these areas that we saw as like really important pillars. And so let's start with going through those. Sarah and I are gonna take you through those 8. We shared them. But what we thought we'd do is stay as a group, as a coherent group, and just go through these 8. And maybe if anybody's got points to make about each of these 8, about what could be included, or if there's things that need to be adapted, we can go there. And then what would be great is if we, if one of these 8 stand out to you particularly, and you'd like to play a role in being, you know, a kind of like a team captain for one of those uploads, that would be super helpful. But let's stay together for now. So the first one with Shane's closing words, and I'm so grateful to you, Shane, for bringing that in. The number of people that came back and said how much that resonated with them. You know, thank you for bringing the reverence in here, because it's missing in so much of our lives, the ritual and the sacred nature of our Dharma in this work. And so thank you for bringing that in. And we wanted to put that as number 1 of these uploads. So we describe this as bringing the ancient into the present with new forms of ritual, recalling the sacred nature of sound within and beyond music. So we can adapt that. And Sarah's going to go next to number 2.
Yeah, and just to clarify the nature of these groupings, they emerged from the discussion yesterday, and there are attempts to create 8 working groups that can dive in more deeply, with the idea that each group will come up with one specific actionable recommendation around the topic that arose from our discussion yesterday. So the second topic is soundscaping, bringing sound into public spaces such as schools, government buildings, airports, transit stations, and etc. You could also think of it as sound architecture. And we intentionally separated out hospitals for reasons that should be clear to some people, and that will be made clear. But so soundscaping does not deal with hospitals, but it deals with all these other kinds of public spaces.
Could I add a small addendum? Just before we move on, just as we are talking about suggestions and feedback, this is entirely suggestive. I would offer that we come up, you know, as these groups are having conversations, I think finding a nexus point around one solution is going to be too trivially challenging. in the sense that there's going to be so many thoughts and ideas that if we can either try to hone in on maybe 3 to 5 would be a little bit easier, because then there'd be more synergy around everybody's contribution. That's just my thought, though.
Shane, I think this is a great point, because what we're seeing is that the uploads, each of the 8 streams, could kind of be like categories of that effort. And what may end up happening is that in that particular category, there is multiple solutions recommended. And so we're kind of adapting real time this template we call the upgrade, which is where we input all of these. So that's really helpful feedback. Because what we don't want to do, we want to prioritize and we want to shine a light around each section, so that the solutions listed can be made visible to funders that are interested in Sound for Health, for example.
Yeah, because definitely amongst all the topics, I already know at least, well, I wouldn't say I know, but there's already at least 3 to 5 solutions in my brain around like, oh, this one, this one, this one. Like, these are the things that I've been thinking about for years. And these are particular areas that I could lay suggestions on. So.
And we're going to create a structure for everybody to be able to put those in, so that we can, so that we can really make the most out of everybody's commitment of 8 hours of time. So thank you for that, Shane. Melissa is going to introduce the next one.
Yeah, and so the next one we have is sound psychology, and intentionally separating psyche and ology out to really use the word psyche not as mind but as soul. And this is all about how we use sound to heal trauma and therapy. There's a lot of great research in this area, but also a lot of room for improvement for us to weave this in as therapists, psychologists, sound practitioners. So.
I would like to add that area is like so huge, because you could really add in depression, all the different issues that we focus on in this psychology area. And so it's to expand it to not just trauma, but the full range of issues that we have mentally, emotionally.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Great.
and that's trauma with like a lowercase t and a capital T.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree with David on that.
And a very big U.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a huge area. I mean, it's so huge and so important. So important.
Yeah,
well,
agreed.
One of the intentions here with the up game is that this is like the inaugural game around Sound for Health. But what we'll see is that we'll rapidly be forming communities and coherence and collective intelligence. We think of the new Holy Trinity as communitas, catharsis, and ecstasis. And our intention from the game is to create experiences to bring those out. And obviously, when you bring brilliant people together, they're going to want to stay together in certain fashions. And so the intention is it's an invitation for us to use this framework as a way to pursue further collaboration. And so our hope is this, provides enormous value back to everybody that has participated. So the fourth one, we wanted here to mix this concept of kind of trans tech. Nicole Bradford has been leading the Trans Tech Conference, and there's an enormous amount of new innovations around technology and sound, like sound at home, sound, new devices that people can wear. And so we categorize trans sound as in like the trans tech of sound. And these are like, we're working on these memes. We're gonna continue to polish. But maybe, I don't know if this word's been coined. We just thought of it yesterday. But new technologies that bring listeners to higher states of consciousness and peak performance. So think like Flow Genome Project, Flow States. Lulu, you've got a lot of experience around this, but that's the broad category we wanted to kind of shine a light on, this like really exciting renaissance of technologies that are utilizing sound. So Sarah, do you want to do Sound Body?
Sure. So Sound Body is bringing sound into hospitals to treat ill and dying patients and to support wellness for healthcare providers. And as David Gibson has articulated a few times, there's really 2 different streams of this. One is providing palliative support, but the other and the more ambitious one is bringing vibrational medicine into hospitals, and those may occur on different tracks, but they both are incorporated in this group of the sound body.
No, I must see this as being split into two areas, because there's the whole area of simply working physically on the body with the cells and the organs and all the different aspects, or cancer and things like that. And then there's the whole area of actually trying to sync with the hospitals and with, you know, and really get it into the mainstream, which is kind of a whole different path and takes different, it's just different.
Yeah, I want to say 2 words about that real quick. Just that I have spent a decent bit of time talking to hospitals about sharing, you know, sound healing practices within. And at first I was volunteering, and then I changed the conversation to looking for funding, and so I could be paid to go in and do this. And I wasn't successful yet, but there was a lot more openness to that than I found than I expected. So I'd like to make more inroads in that field.
Great. So the funding question around this, I think, is going to be really important as well. The funding and the mainstreaming, and we wanted to bring in Leo's point, which I'm going to come to in a moment, around sound resonance. But this is going to be an important point around healthcare systems, is like the marketing. We kind of put sound resonance as like the communication, the comms team, you know, that is going to look at why is it that so many people think that any mention of sound for healing is kind of on the woo spectrum. It seems weird to me. So like there's a communications and a marketing job that I think we can do around sounds together. We kind of connect those two. So we all appreciate that probably every one of you wants to be on every one team, and we're going to try and make sure there's enough cross-pollination as possible. So Sarah, do you want to introduce, I'm introducing the next one. So number 6, sound hygiene. We thought this was a pattern interrupt, sound hygiene, because we're all familiar with language of hygiene, in particular in a pandemic. And so we thought introducing this concept of sound hygiene to make people aware that they're essentially being fed junk food of sound in like a lot of mainstream music. And so we thought this was super interesting to a lot of people. I find it totally fascinating. But this notion of, someone mentioned yesterday the sound pollution, and like just being really conscious of, Serena mentioned this, being really conscious of our own curation of sound. And so we wanted to connect here around like recommendations it could be for addressing sound pollution and creating harmonious collective states. And this could be for the individual, but also in spaces too. So, do you want to do the next one, Sarah?
Sure. The next one we've already discussed a bit, that's sound resonance, and that's spreading knowledge and awareness about the transformative power of sound. So it's marketing and communications. It's also probably event production, because of course the most powerful way to communicate it is by creating experiences for people.
There's kind of one other area that's can be just left in the trans tech, the trans sound section, and that is brainwave entrainment. Because the work around brainwave entrainment and working in the brain is really huge right now, especially creating brain maps with electrodes on the brain to create different brainwave states. And some of the science of what people are doing in trans tech is really, really cool. So it's really like the whole mental area of brainwave entrainment, which we could just leave in the trans sound, because that's kind of would go in there as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, David. And I think what we could potentially do is, once we break down each of these into the areas that it includes, we could it could be quite fun to create a kind of like a collective intelligence mind map where we start linking each of these to others. We'll show that each of these 8 categories are actually look like a kind of brain firing neurons.
Yeah.
Because they're all interrelated, really.
Yeah, so they're all like just like us. You know? Finally, sound play. Now this was we were kind of debating for a long time yesterday, what's the 8th? And we came up with all sorts of different synthesis and this felt like a category because we're, number one, we're playing a game and we are big believers that play is going to be central to how we put ourselves into creative spaces to really unleash our full collective intelligence and not just make the system a little bit better, but make it quantum leaps better than it's currently there, because it's really a design challenge. And so we thought this final category was almost a kind of hat tip to that as we look to bring more and more play into people's lives, and be very serious about our play, sound is going to play a really important role. And so thinking about this category from like, how can we create immersive experiences with sound through virtual festivals? Like we're at Burning Man, we're creating the Omniverse, which is going to be an 8 hour a day, 8 hours a day for 8 days immersive experience that we're going to create. And so thinking about ways we can bring sound into those experiences through play. And so we put this as a summary as like new innovations in entertainment, healing, and transcendence.
And I would add, Lucian, that where there's a lot of movement in this area, what we see Sound Self doing, Andromeda, what Emmy's new project is, like there's a lot happening around the entertainment side of this, VR, the sound with that, and how we can translate that into really for patients and that kind of movement.
Oh, yeah. So there we are. That's what we came up with as a synthesis. And bear in mind, it's kind of like moving real time as we're listening to people's feedback. But maybe if we could just go around, and if you have suggestions or additions, or if you'd like to volunteer to take the helm, there's going to be one of our team is going to go into each of these 8. We're going to stay together as a group today, and then tomorrow we'll actually break into groups. Each one will have at least 2 people of the 8, and yeah, we'll explore what's how we want to bring out the upload for each.
So do you want to start with sunrise?
May I just add something? I'm sure some of this will probably come together as the 8 are coming together, but some thoughts that I had are coming up with a common language for sound healing. There are a lot of schools out there. I also teach now, and there doesn't seem to be a common language among the schools of thought on sound healing, or even just some fundamental standards. So that's one thought. And then in terms of accessibility and community outreach, who are the faces that are being seen in the community of leaders? So I think that we need a diversity in leadership to reach more people, not just diversity in what we're seeing here with researchers and, people in different parts of sound healing, but people of color. And, one of the things that I see a lot is, we want to show up and we want to be in all the communities to help a lot of people. But I think the power is really going to be teaching other people how to do this work safely and effectively so that they can empower themselves to lead the communities that they're passionate about serving. And I think a lot of that is going to come from a common language. I think a lot of that's going to come from some of this marketing. And I'll stop there. But those are some of my lingering thoughts.
Danielle, that's super helpful and yeah, definitely resonant. So I think the common language around sound could be a category within sound resonance, because it's all about communications. So that would be a really good place to bring that out. And I would also say that the diversity of practitioners that are brought together. And it could be some, you know, our thinking is that this could form one or more DAOs, if you're familiar with that, a decentralized autonomous organization, where practitioners come together to collaborate. But more on that later.
Can I add something, Lucian, as well, just before? So I have a process point and then something to what Danielle did. And Bob, could you mute or Mika, just watch your mics, because there's someone in the background making a lot of. What you were just talking about, Danielle, is something I did about 15 years ago with a group of people where we convened the field of people in collective intelligence and collective wisdom and collective consciousness. That field had never really been brought together, and it was amazing because it wasn't considered a field or a discipline at all. And there was this huge spectrum. And when people, it's kind of like what we're doing here in a way, but it was a little bit more of a specific intention. So that probably could be in the sound resonance, just an inquiry around that. What would that look like as another layer of the ongoing game? And then an invitation around, you know, I'm an open space technology person with working with that way of convening, and we have butterflies and bumblebees. And so I'm wondering, and that's like where we get to cross-pollinate. So we go, could we do like the first round where we choose where we go, and then take some of that and go into another group, so you're cross-pollinating. And what we really want in whole systems design change is synergy, right? So then you're like, oh, they're doing this solution thing was happening over there. And you could kind of, when you do that, that cross-pollinating will be even more fertile ground.
Yeah, might there be a way to move from group to group easily in this?
We I wouldn't go so far as to say making it up as we're going along, but you know, there's some loose structure. So what we're doing is listening carefully. This is our inaugural gathering. And so we're listening carefully to what will be most conducive to group coherence. And so if you have suggestions around this, we're listening. And yeah, I think being able to have kind of group leaders, but people being able to maybe take a moment to like jump into other groups to kind of hear a synthesis would be really helpful. And we are I'm going to talk more about this another time, but we spent the last 2 years developing digital tools specifically designed to enable community collective intelligence and community collaboration. And so we're going to be, once we come to the end of this game cycle, we're going to be inviting you into a digital space where you can continue the conversation and invite others as well.
And the idea is to cross-pollinate. Like let's all have, you know, the collection of all of us again together. We're going to work through these 8. Then we're going to divide into groups, take a little bit of a deeper dive, and then return all to each other, speak to the ideas that were exchanged. We feel like there's going to be a lot of similarities already, kind of put those pieces together, and then people can divide out again and get into different groups as well, if they're called to more to certain things that were shared in certain groups. But then turning back to the larger group.
Yeah, I think given the timing today, we probably just have enough time to do one cycle of breakout groups, but we can come back tomorrow with the intention of cross-pollinating in that way. Technically, David, it's not so easy once you're in a group to just jump to another group. People have to be kind of shuffled around. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to set some time limit for a small group interaction, and then have people come back into the, you know, the main pod to be reassigned. Unfortunately, that's the way it needs to work. So technically it's a little bit, you have to rely on a central person to move people around.
I think having the full, everybody be able to comment on feedback from what the group has come up with will resolve that.
So it could potentially serve us better off the cuff here, just to like keep everyone together today.
Yeah.
Walk through each 8, just get a little bit deeper in now that we have them, and then people can then have overnight to really dial into which one they want to decide on. Then tomorrow we can go straight into groups.
I like that.
And come back at the end and have an open sharing. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Okay.
And speaking to the importance of time, I know it's already been an established, like hour and a half. In my experience, anything that's in an hour and a half, always just make it 2 hours. Just to be honest.
We actually talked about this yesterday. And
Any massage, any sound bath, any type, sex, drugs, food, whatever it is. When it gets to that 90-minute hit, it's like, I wish it was like at least a little bit longer.
At least 120.
Just my piece.
So funny you say this, because this is resonant. We had, following yesterday's meeting, we were like, look, this isn't enough time, clearly. What we're going to do is we're going to have the dinner portal on Thursday nights as separate from the up game. And the up game will begin with 4 2-hour meetings, and we're going to change that to next week. So we made the commitment to you for these 90 minutes this week, we didn't want to change it with this group, but we've already learned that lesson and completely agree with you, Shane. So thank you. And let's start. Shane, you brought this up. If there's anything that we could go through one by one and stay together and just let's cross-pollinate now. Mm-hmm. So number one, sound reverence. We at Savannah House have been gathering people into this experiment about what is a prototype planetary embassy. And we really believe that there's so much we can learn from the Freemasons, from the Knights Templar, from organizations that have lasted the test of time through their kind of group coherence. There's a lot to learn there, a lot to learn from things like the Eleusinian mysteries and bringing back ritual into how do we create a sense of deep belonging and participation in the team of people that are working together to redesign the world, and that make it really clear that actually for a lot of people, they are first going to be on that team and they're second going to be Americans and British and French and Chinese, etc. But they're on the team planet first. And so thinking about these questions like sound reverence and ritual is going to be foundational. So Shane, anything you want to add and anyone else want to add here, and we'll just move quickly through the 8 for the remaining time.
I guess just to mirror some of the concepts I shared about it yesterday. I think one of the major opportunities we have with being able to remind people of their divinity in terms of this reverence, because at the end of the day, we aren't just human. We are so much more. And unfortunately, more can be said about this in a day than I can summarize it in a minute. And it's going to take so many facets of being able to tackle this, from the interpersonal of the individual, from the micro to the macro, from the individual person and their own relationship to their whole reality, to how that spans out to their connection with others, how that expands out to their connection to society, how that then expands out to their connection with nature and Mother Earth, and then how that expresses itself through the meta current of how that then evolves into their connection with the whole universe. And then, as you begin to now address other aspects of that, from their own psychological traumas to their religious or dogmatic experiences to ultimately, I think, coming to a deepening, even greater question of what is sacred, what is reverent. And I think when we come to the postulation that everything is sacred and everything is reverent, it calls into an even greater question of what ultimately is that actual relationship, and how do you establish that when you have spent 15, 20, 30, 60 years, whatever age the person is, who has never had this relationship before and never had this level of understanding. And so addressing these things on a micro level, down to just how our breath is sacred, how eye contact is sacred, how the nourishment of your food is sacred. And so all of these things, it's going to be a much, much deeper conversation to have. But these are general topics that I have found, not only through my experience diving deep into my own well of my own understanding of self, but also the greater meta experience of how my relationship is with everything. you know, person, organic or non-organic otherwise.
Beautiful. I'm curious how we can do that in a practical way, in a way that's
Mary,
relatable
last class we were
to
talking about
everyone. And I
material.
speak to that in finding my own resistance sometimes with people, their resistance, I should say, when it sounds too like religious or woo or whatever words you want to put around it. How can we create that experience, deliver it for people in a way that doesn't make them put a wall up because they're defensive around those kinds of things? Y'all follow me?
Yeah, I can speak to that. You know, we've had to address this in detail because a lot of it's about creating a container, and that takes it out of the religious aspect. And so we were, when we took our entire curriculum of all our instructors into 2 Montessori schools and created all the exercises, we had to be very careful about, you know, bringing in any religious aspects. So we looked at many ways. So what occurs to me is really a document, maybe even a book by Shane, that would really go through all the different ways to create container and all the different aspects of how different religions and different different groups have created these containers that are unbelievable. And that would be like the coolest thing to really get the wide perspective on what's been done through cultures through the beginning of time. I would be really interested in that.
That would be rad. But I would also add that just even the word container, you know, thinking about when I first got into this, super skeptic anytime anyone would say container or modality or chakra or energy field, anything, my first reaction was just like, I want to push all of you away. So I think it's really trying to understand who it is that you're trying to, who is the audience, because we're not going to be able to just throw a net out there and expect everyone to understand what container is or to be open to that word. You know, as Shane was saying, there's, you know, the micro to the macro to the micro. It's like, I think it's going to be really understanding who we want to target first, and the language will really be able to come through on how to reach them.
If I may, Danielle, I just agree with you. I think everything that we're discussing, everything that we're going to discuss is going to end up coming back down to sound resonance. How we communicate to the public and the general awareness of people is really, really important. I can just tell you from some of my experience, I recently took up the practice of Qigong, and what got me into that was the 6 healing sounds. And there's something about that, just creating something in a very bite-sized format that I think is quite interesting. One could initially categorize us into, we could create different subcategories to do with health, emotional, nature, that type of thing. And if I know that one of you mentioned that it might be a bit trivia to actually try and put this into, to synthesize it into like smaller categories. You might be missing out on a lot of wealth of knowledge, but in some ways to do that, I think it becomes easier. And I really like what you're saying, Danielle, about the conversation and the vocabulary that one uses. It's really, really important, really integral to how you communicate this to other people. And what we speak amongst ourselves is not necessarily how we have to expose that to a larger audience. But I do think creating some kind of categories or bite-sized information in different subcategories is a good way forward in that respect.
Beautiful. Thank you for this. And this point, Danielle, that you raise and you know, you speak to, I think the key here with the up game is not to try and dilute what we see as like a truth so that it can get the broadest mass audience, but rather recognize like, how can we bring forth the ancient future? So not to recognize that how we have in whatever forms triggers in present society, actually there's an invitation to reframe language here, or reclaim language here, because we should be speaking about energy. Everything is energy. And you know, a lot of people are triggered by that, but you know, one of the reasons why I believe that we need to be permissionaries. Our mission is to give permission to others, and the more we can speak about this with the backing of experts, collective intelligence, science, measurable results, the more credibility that's going to have as pillars of a new society. Because most people are, I believe, like ready for a new story. And so I think this is going to be key. So
agree. And just making it approachable. So really, I feel like this is a big piece going into the next 7, is really that thought of be the everyman and make it think about it being approachable, because all of us are very much steeped in this work. So I feel like that's one thing that can get lost quickly, because we're in that world. So really step outside and pretend you've never heard of any of this. Is it translatable?
Yeah, I want to speak up as an anthropologist here, and also as somebody whose father was a Benedictine monk and a Catholic priest. So there's 2 things that I want to say. One is that languages get created among groups in order to express within the groups. And so the language that we share comes from the fact that we're all in a social and cultural world together. And what we need to be able to spread the message out is to build relationships with people who have different languages and who live in different social worlds. So it's that root, it's the mycelium of the relationships from which the new language and the new experiences grow. So for example, I can connect you to Catholic priests who are Benedictine monks who do Benedictine chanting, and guess what? That's an ancient technology in the modern world, right? So, and they're not going to necessarily understand all the language that we use, but they're not necessarily not going to either, because let me tell you, my father was a mystic who lived in Peru, Illinois, among a bunch of pig farmers and corn farmers, and he was a spiritual counselor for many, many people and changed many people's lives. And when he came to my house and he saw the books on my shelves, he was very interested in them. So there are ways to build bridges, and that's why it's so important that we get diversity into this group, and that includes diversity of ages, of colors, of ethnic backgrounds, of political viewpoints. And I subscribe to some conservative newspapers because my job is to understand the way everybody in America thinks. And I will tell you that there are a lot of conversations going on in conservative newspapers that would surprise people in this group that actually are very much in alignment with the things that we're talking about and that we care about. And so building those relationships can't be secondary to the task of this group if what this group really wants to accomplish is bringing this into the mainstream. It has to be fundamental. It has to be a personal commitment of everybody in this group to reach out to somebody across what is perceived as a significant difference in our society and bring them into the group. That's the way you make the future now. It's not something that has to happen tomorrow. It needs to happen that way right now by our commitment to making those relationships.
Thank you, Sarah. Beautiful. So let's take that into 2.
You know, I would like to say, as a point of order, I really like this group approach to every one of these. It could even be better. I mean, if we have time to break up into groups, it would be nice. But everybody, this is working. I really like what we're doing right now.
That's why we're trying to do a little bit of experimentation with both. See, just to ensure we get to the depth. It's pretty ambitious, to say the least, to synthesize a topic of such historic importance in 8 hours. So that's one of the reasons we just wanted to make sure we try and get some meat on the bones. And so we'll do both. Thank you, David. Any comments on soundscaping?
I actually wanted to leave one last comment before we shift.
Go for it.
And just to expand on a lot of what was just shared from everybody, because everybody's point was valid. And I just want to add this one last piece, because ultimately I think in the end too, you know, despite our knowledge, despite our wisdom, despite our personal experience, and not necessarily to say coming from a space of like what will sell it most, because, you know, we're not selling this to anybody in that particular regard, right? But the thing that carries, that I have noticed over my years doing this, the thing that carries it most is just being who you are and living by that conviction. And to highlight that truly, because you can come with any amount of PhDs, any amount of ayahuasca, ayahuasca experiences, the whole 9. But it's how you are with me that carries the greatest level of importance. And because the body intrinsically knows, the heart intrinsically knows, the mind will try to cover it up with whatever facilitations of whether you're tricking me or trying to pull a cloak over my face, you know. And I think that the embodiment of that energy is the most important aspect of everything that we carry with us, to mirror from what Sarah just mentioned in terms of going out there with this energy. The greatest conviction is the conviction of self, of who we are without self-righteousness, so as to bring this as missionaries into the world, so that people of all colors, of all cultures, of all places can truly understand like where we come from, because it's where they are going and where we are going, and it's together. So
we said
Shane.
That speaks to it. Like, speaking of resonance, and like our word is the ultimate tool we have as sound alchemists, and spoken from a place of truth and from the heart, from anybody who's receiving it in the body and all the way through into the mind, everything. That's how it resonates. So beautifully said. So what about on architecture? What about bringing into public spaces, schools, government buildings? We want to have a bit on each.
Joshua, I think Dom had his hand up and wanted to say something.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. I just had a very quick example where I've had some success, which I'd love to expand out. And Lucian touched on it when we first gathered on the calls. So I have had quite a few teachers come to soundbaths I host in Oakland. And some of them teach in East Oakland schools, very underserved schools. And so what I did was, just out of some of the money I was getting, I would donate a bowl after every sound bath and just send it via Amazon to one of the teachers. And they loved using them in the class. They started getting feedback. What they would do is not just use the bowl as sort of like a calming method and a point of mindfulness in the day, which they said was incredibly effective. It allowed them to bring sound in as a topic. So they'd start to teach around sound. And they just said, you know, the feedback I was getting was incredible from the students. So that's sort of one program I've seen as a success that I think for the money involved would expand out very quickly. And we're getting sound in early. And what's really good is teachers can kind of bring anything into the class that they want within reason, especially if it creates anything around mindfulness, so they didn't have to justify what they were doing. So yeah, so I just wanted to share that.
So Dom, just perfect, crystal clear example of what could evolve into a upload.
Mm-hmm.
Every teacher gets a sound bowl.
Yeah.
As a fund, like, okay, here's a project, here's a community project that you can fund. Every teacher in the world, I'm on the board, I'm a judge of the Global Teacher Prize, where every year the Varkey Foundation give away $1 million to the world's best teacher. There's existing teacher communities that we could go and distribute that. It's the perfect example of the kind of things we want to get at as community solutions to planetary challenges. So thank you for that example.
You know, we've got the Sound Education Center with the 2,000 exercises we created. We're giving away a large number of them to anybody for homeschooling. We just set up the site for homeschooling as well. Also, Crystal Tones donated $30,000 worth of bowls to the 2 Montessori schools that we're working with the exercises for every age group, from 3 months all the way up to 18 years. So check it out in the link, the Sound Education Center. I'm just going to be getting it out there in the next week. And the exercises are in detail based on all the books on child development and from our 24 instructors at the Institute as well. So it's been a huge amount of work put into this curriculum, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's the way we'll change the world the most, is to get it in implemented for the children. Already we have 200 hours of video with the kids. It's unbelievable to see them so still. You ever seen a room of 3 to 6 year olds not moving? It's beautiful.
That's great persuasive communication right there. You'd have so many parents in this country on board like that.
Right.
I think that's a great another great upgrade is really creating a promotional package around what you guys have already done, David, and rolling it out in a very conscious way, including doing some research, as well as with putting the bowls in the classrooms, you know, planning some research projects so that we can actually look at before and after with the kids and with the parents. Because the thing about when you change the lives of the kids, you change the lives of their parents. So we shouldn't forget that as a research target.
Well said. Well said. This is the perfect example of a sound resonance. Having a curriculum for schools and bowls to teachers. As you said, Sarah, this is, you know, wouldn't it be beautiful if we live in a world where the next generation help us create the civilization we're all envisioning, you know? So this is a beautiful example of an upgrade, and very tangible. So let's do just closing remarks. We're not going to have time to go through all of them. We'll meet tomorrow again at 11 a.m. for half an hour of offerings, and then we'll come back as a group on these, and then we'll start to break into smaller groups and come back together as a group again tomorrow.
But it's so good.
It's so good. We don't.
Let's just do this all day.
I would just
Everybody stays.
I would just like to.
Go ahead.
I would just like to add something, if possible, just a tiny little thing. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we got you, Mel.
Well, as an artist, I feel like I mean I can't wait till we talk about these subjects on Saturday Night Live. You know, when like my band gets a Grammy and I can just grab the mic and speak about these subjects in front of everybody. Because I hear my what my kids the playlist on my daughters, and there's so much music that we should not listen to because the content and the vibration of this music is so negative. So I feel like as an artist, it's such an amazing responsibility and such a beautiful opportunity to be in this group because I'm gonna be carrying the torch wherever I go, and it's amazing to have this support because it's about time to bring this subject to Saturday Night Live, to the Grammys, to the Oscars, to whatever, to the actual mainstream, where kids are having this huge consumption of music that it's not vibrating for the greater good. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, there's in sound hygiene, we're talking about sound pollution, and I think this is actually something that Dom first made me aware to when we were connecting around getting sound healing into juvenile prisons. And I was so shocked to realize that actually that there's like what we've been hearing in the mainstream is kind of like the sound equivalent, the ambient equivalent of junk food. That just completely threw me. Yeah. It really was like, whoa, okay, that's really clever and really sort of dark and insidious. So this sound hygiene one, it's I think going to be super important to bring in. So let's just closing remarks here as we go through, and thank you all so much for showing up so strong again. And we just do want to do our absolute best to respect these time containers. And Sarah made a suggestion here that Sarah, do you want to share?
Sure. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, sure. What I just suggested is in the chat, it was clear that some people were able to stay a bit longer. Starting earlier is difficult because Emil's calling in from Hawaii, and we want to make sure that Emil is not asleep when he may seem like he's asleep now, but he's actually just in deep connection, but he may be asleep if we start earlier. So I'm just suggesting that those who can stay an extra 30 minutes tomorrow, that we schedule it to go for 2 hours, and that in that 30 minutes, we can have this kind of group synthesis conversation for whoever's able to stay. And then in the originally scheduled hour and a half, we can have the small breakout groups and people moving between. We can change over those groups at a couple of points so people can move among groups.
That feels really good.
Yeah,
I'll stay.
Also, we've got the nightlife tonight. We have a whole class on physics of sound. And it's interactive, so we can talk about different aspects. But, I was a physics major to start at UC Berkeley, so I've got some really detailed ideas as to how sound works. And if you're going to be doing research, I think it might, the whole idea is to help inform your research more. So if you can make it
we're going to share the, I know you shared it, David, but we're going to share in the follow-up notes from today.
Cool.
We'll share the link as well for everybody, and we're certainly aiming to be there.
Cool.
Thank you. David, here, hip hip hooray for the first Up Game field trip. Nighttime safari. There will be many of those, so we're gonna have field trips all over the world, and in every direction. So any closing remarks, and just deep bow and gratitude to everyone for playing the game.
I think one one piece I'd like to add to the mix too is, you know, as much as I want to highlight the ease of the conversation that we're all having, I also want to. I'm a strong pragmatist, and realism is a very strong suit in my life because of just, you know, for those of us out in the field, whether it be working with individuals, whether it be working with groups, for those of us who have centers and all of this stuff, I also do want to highlight the challenges that we do face. As beautiful as it is that we are all talking about the things that we are, and we can collectively tune into that energy, I also want to highlight the challenges that are going to come from this, because it's going to go so far beyond just our ability to reach people. We are going to be butting up against politics, healthcare systems, institutions, systemic beliefs that have been older than time itself. But I think the beauty of it is that we have the ability to ignite the epigenetics within our DNA cells. And this is where I think the level of presence is incredibly important in our ability to portray the world that we seek to build. And it is through this collective intention that that all of us, you know, it is starkly being shown that us coming together for this hour and a half, sharing all of these thoughts, sharing all of this love, and sharing our knowledge goes to show that, you know, for anybody that might be disenfranchised, don't be. You know, we're at a very pivotal point in our lives, and our ability to be able to come together in this way. We are foreseeing, you know, and constructing something that our human culture has never actually gotten to experience before. And I would like to, as much as possible, highlight the importance of that and sticking to that energy as greatly as we can, because of we are, as it is, alone but together currently in this epidemic. So
Shane, thank you so much for that. You've continued just to bring such wisdom
to us.
Much deep bow of gratitude for who you are and how you are showing up here for us all. And what I would say is that, you know, I know that we have profound cooperative advantage here. In the, you know, yes, we are in a kind of David Goliath situation right now, but, you know, we know how that story ends, and it's going to end that way again. And so the second rule of the Up Game is to have fun and recognize that we're letting the greatest story win. And we know the greatest story of David and Goliath is David winning, because David represents all of us. Like the first rule of the game is we're playing for all to win. So let's wrap up there. And we thought we could all wrap up with that sacred sound that was invoked by Serena at the beginning, and just close out with a collective Om. How does that sound? Until tomorrow.
Nice.
And tonight, the field trip. Everyone can unmute if you wish, and we'll... Serena, would you mind leading us through it?
Sure. Would you like the sound from the mudra, or just a sound to ground us all?
Just the like closing a collective Om, we thought.
Ah, okay. Let's all take a deep breath. Just exhale all your air. Deep inhale and meet on Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you so much. Looking so forward to seeing everyone tomorrow.
Bye.
Good night.
Blessings. So much love, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So good.
Created solutions. That is